What is art? What is this process of making art? It's a mixture of music and movement and visual. So all three of the arts blend together.
Hi, this is Colleen Akiko, your We Be the Change host. This special video episode is part of a Zoom conversation last February with an incredible artist and my beloved aunt, Bernice Strawn. At 95, she was still radiating joy and insight and sharing about the dynamics of visual form and the invisible energies that bring them to life. Just 2 months later, Bernice made her transition. She was like a second mom to me, and it feels like such a gift to share this glimpse into her world, her art, her spirit, and the deep inner presence that she carried through it all. In our conversation, you'll hear stories about her spirit boats and her sunflower years, and the way that welding and sculpting became forms of meditation for her. From sketching radio programs as a little girl, to her life with my Uncle Mel, her husband, fellow artist, and environmental advocate, Bernice shows how creativity isn't just about technique, but about tuning in, feeling your way, and letting the process unfold, mistakes and all. If you've ever felt disconnected from your creative spark or wondered how to bring more presence and ease into your expression, I think you'll find something special here that speaks to you. Bernice, you were talking about how when you were growing up, your parents were dancers and that you and your brother and sister all loved to dance. And you shared a beyond precious memory of sitting on the stool in the dining room, drawing what you heard on the radio, drawing the Lone Ranger. Who else did you draw on the radio?
Bob Perkins.
I wish I could see those drawings now.
Everyone going.
Yeah. I remember being a kid with your kids. Everybody walked around drawing things. Often one or another of your children showing you their latest in their sketchbook. And that was just part of daily life with the Straughns. We didn't talk about your husband, Mel, my uncle, my dad's older brother. He passed, and there we are, constantly putting things together, as you described with your sculptures, in a different way. I remember Mel as not only being a brilliant art professor and artist, but also on the leading edge of speaking out for the earth.
Environmental concerns.
Yes.
He loved to draw skulls.
Yeah.
Like a dance of curvy lines. That's the thing, when you're wielding the brush, it's like a dance that you're involved in. This is one of the paintings. So you can read the dynamics of this flash and then these counter movements. So it's a choreography, I suppose, composing movements with a group of dancers with thrust and counter thrust, like this thrust and then this counter thrust. It's from a book of loose pages that we made.
Wow. That one just reminds me, speaking of dance, of percussion instruments.
This is an ink stick that you rub on a little slate dish to dissolve this ink with water. Let's see. So the Oriental influence was very strong in what we did in those years. We were down in Texas. For instance, here's the drawing, it's just a straight drawing of corn.
Mel Strawn has a few books out of his drawings and paintings and his process. I wish he was here in the body to share in that way. I have a print of that. Yeah.
Visual forms, interpreting it in a few strokes of the brush.
Yes.
There were a lot of rocks in Texas. Although I haven't been to Japan, I had absorbed a lot of the spirit of the inks from all the books that we have.
Yes. I love that word that you used a minute ago, dynamic, the dynamic in the paintings.
Yep. Wow. And thrust, counter thrust, and action building up. And then, it feels like it needs something over here. So put something in there.
Yeah, beautiful.
An interesting book. This was a drawing of me by Mel.
I'm thinking of all that you're sharing alongside the headiness of our time. We're so brainy. We're so techy. We figure things out with our heads so much. And for many people, the inclination to do art is like, oh, I'm going to figure out how to draw this thing. And what I love about what you're sharing is it is not leaving the head out, but it's allowing much more than the head space to express onto the paper or onto the sculpture, coming from a more holistic, whole body feeling sense of expression.
Because we know other bodies, other people by their characteristic movements, with their beautiful smile. Your smile is coming across very nicely.
Likewise.
Grooming.
Oh, yes.
A matter of figuring out what is art? What is this process of making art? And most simplistically, people, they make a picture of something that you can identify.
Yes.
And it's not in that. It's a mixture of music and movement and visual. So all three of the arts blend together.
It's the blend.
And in the background where I'm looking at you on the screen is one of my boats.
Yes, there we go.
I called them spirit boats.
Tell us about the spirit boats. You did them for a number of years.
And I can't think where it started, except that we lived in Bear Island, there's a Navy base channel, and we saw a lot of boats. And I loved going down to the harbor and the yacht club and seeing all the boats. And floating on a Michigan pond in a canoe is a spiritual experience of ease. It's this connotation of rest and peacefulness. Be floating in a boat on a quiet pond.
Yeah.
In the second story level of the Salida Hospital, it's lit from all around, and there are 3 or 4 of my boats hanging in the hospital. And so it evokes that sense of floating and ease. They're both similar to the one you have hanging on your wall, but they're bigger. They're like 8 feet long. And they're looking at the skins up. I never figured the skins on the outside. I wanted the air to pass through.
Yeah. And that's one of the delightful aspects of the spirit boats is they have a form and yet the air passes through, but they're boats. They carry us.
Would that we could float around like that in a space.
Yeah. And do you have spirit boats in the REI up in Denver?
It used to be, but then they took them away. They had a different lighting system or something. Hung them between some trees out in the front yard, and I had a sale during the COVID period.
Okay.
We had an outdoor art show. These both went home to other people's houses, and they have them hung in there.
Oh, excellent. Yes, I remember when I was living with you guys, there were big sculptures hanging from the tall ceilings, and sometimes there's a lot of art outside and inside.
We had a big yard.
Yeah, and a big yard. And at that time, you were starting your sunflower phase. I remember going to art shows full of your various sunflower paintings. I remember loving what you wrote as the artist in one of the art shows, the sunflower exhibitions. You talked about how you had always loved the mountains and you were so excited about moving to the mountains up near Denver, and you got into living next to the mountains and you found your center in the sunflowers and you shifted from mountains to sunflowers. Did I get that right?
Kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is a sunflower. Yeah. One of your sunflower paintings. Now, what was your medium with that? That looks like ink. Okay. Yeah.
Really.
Yeah.
Very different from the way I put together the different shapes of wood. It's not very different from welding together pieces of metal, because you get good big arcs and flat surfaces. So it's similar to constructing pieces like I do from wood.
This takes a little longer, I bet.
It takes stronger knees and back, because you have to bend over, kneel, and we're males.
Yeah.
Essentially, welding is tacking parts together. And so that gives you a lot of freedom. Instead of somebody making a portrait bust, which is a static shape, my approach to welded steel thing is more movement, because I can take a big curving steel thing and put it next to a straight thing and compose the parts in that way, in the space.
Wow. It's interesting. Here you are saying that, in a sense, the welding was actually easier. And that's one of my favorite images of you, is you standing up with a welding torch in hand with your big welding helmet thing on your head and smiling.
Couldn't see the smile.
You had to take the whole thing off for that, but yeah, you were happy in your welding space.
They're the welding mask for eclipses of the sun.
Yeah, multi-purpose welding mask.
It's a similar process. It's assembling, putting parts together. And that's a very interactive kind of thing. They're interacting all the time with potential movements in the space. Now, this has come to a resolution yet. It's pretty static. Like a rocking chair lag and a rock. And
That's in process.
yes, it's not been resolved yet. It doesn't blow me away.
And every moment that you are in process of creating something like that, it's not brimming over with excitement. It sounds like it's hard work sometimes, just to stay at it until what needs to come forth.
Something comes forth that you haven't thought about before. There's a new potential there. So
Yeah.
then creation happening.
New creation. And for me, my ego or my little brain is not happy with that. I don't want to allocate time to do something unless I say, oh, that's what it's going to be. Okay, now I can do it.
Yes. And so we're looking for something that's not just static, but that's moving virtually.
Yeah. But you start with the static.
Right. What is the object here? This looks like it's in the foreground, or that's in the background. This is the negative space. And sometimes it has its turn in coming forward, and this part goes back. And I don't know what this was. It was just something that played against this. Maybe this is moving on into another space. So it's much influenced by the famous painting called Six Persimmons. Six persimmons are lined up. They're not just blah, 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 but they're blah, 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 blah.
They're in rhythm.
Yeah.
They have a dynamic, like you said.
So.
Oh, that's yes.
Well, the negative space. I mean, which front.
That has a
building in the space and can move in and out.
I love what you said about the choreography on the paper, the
Yes.
movement that happens, even as you see the same painting again and again. You know, we had a friend over just a couple days ago, and my husband Chris's mother was a painter also. And he stopped and looked at one of her paintings in the hallway, and he pointed out some things in the painting that I had never seen before. I have seen that hundreds of times. And when he looked at it for the first time, he said, oh, wow, look at this. And this feels like this. And this is coming up here. And I'm like, I'll be, look at that already.
Right.
And
ordinary daily lives are not involved with these kinds of dynamics. That's why to do art is really a gift of a different space-time to be in a while. And that's a world of interactions occurs.
a world of interactions. I love that.
That's what makes doing art so exciting, because you're involved in this place. Things are acting upon each other. Like just the placement of these shapes.
So it's a play space when it's coming into creation, And then it's also a play space when you sit with it and feel the dynamics that are evoked from that expression with where I might be in that moment and taking in the dynamic of the piece. Something.
Good. You understand.
I had to stop in my tracks for a moment and soak in what you're saying. And here you are with your brush. And I appreciate that as a Japanese sumi brush. I have a genetic connection with that. Yeah, I actually was gifted when I was a teenager a Japanese brush with the ink and
Stone. Right.
and yeah, I did experience that back then. I wonder if it's calling back to me again.
Yes, you should keep that at hand a lot. It probably strengthens your brain.
That's what I guess I'm getting at, is that it's good medicine to allow that source or the presence of the great mystery of creativity to breathe us and then to somehow surrender to that in a joyful, playful way and see what happens. Whether that's in your case with the brush on the paper or the wood when the sculptures, or could be music, it could be any number of ways. But they're all fun.
Interesting to think about what's the difference between sitting down at the piano and playing the forms of music and sitting down with a brush and a piece of paper and playing with the forms. So it's good that we have different art forms. We have dance and we have sculpture, painting with a brush.
Yeah. And they all intersect in really wonderful ways, don't they? You described your sumi painting going back and forth with your dance.
Feeling a connection in my body of those rhythms.
Yes.
I think, and then one reads art, can look at mouse painting and read it in a way, not with words, but see what systems are repeating and how shapes interact.
Yeah.
You're doing something similar when you listen to music. You're hearing forms, and the form may repeat. It may turn upside down.
Yeah. Backwards, forwards. With the music, I remember my last piano teacher was back on the East Coast. She was a childhood genius in music, playing live on television in her teen years and so forth, and moving up from there. And then she became very reclusive. And in that state, she took me on as a student for a time. And I told her I'd like to learn more in the area of improvisation. And she was masterful at that. And she gave me a taste of what it was like to improvise together with her at the piano. And then as an assignment, she said, okay, you sit at the piano, turn the tape recorder on if you'd like, and start playing. And every time you catch yourself going into a familiar pattern, stop that and do something else. And every time I started going back to the same chords or the same structure or the same diddly-doos, I would say, oh, that's too easy. And what came forth from that time was allowing myself, giving myself permission to do things that didn't feel comfortable and didn't sound really sweet and nice. But I needed to do that for my own growth.
Really, it's the same thing in physically painting, because your hand can do habitual things. Like the students I had out on the park, Washington Park, painting. A lot of people just do, this is the grass. Instead of thinking of each blade of grass having a life of its own in relation to the other blades of grass. So many things are boring and dull, and you try to eliminate those and discover something different.
Yeah. Isn't it amazing at whatever age we are that when we have that attitude towards our life then takes on a whole different dynamic, to use the word that you used.
Yes, we make these physical judgments all the time when we're just in our house. And I'm looking at you with the background of things hanging on the wall and how those are done and how else could they be done. Being present to the realities that are around you and seeing them. Suddenly you see things in a whole new way. It's what working with the old share part system.
Yes.
It didn't have to be a chair. It could have been a sculpture.
Why not?
Yeah.
And what a different direction our attitudes and our lives take when instead of making the primary focus, oh, I've got to control the realities that are here, we say, how can I be present with the realities that are
With the
here?
potential.
With the potential.
Yeah. That opens up a lot of things. Like the
Yeah.
open gesture is so different from closed in hand gesture. There's a lot
Yes.
of vocabulary in dance. Answers in a lot of the times of my life. Yes.
And you carry that with you in all that you embody.
Yes. Yes. It's good to go to dance performances, see interaction between bodies, and it's so similar to interaction things in a picture play.
Yeah. For years, Chris and I were going regularly to groups that are just freeform dancing. When sometimes they'd have a theme or they selected the music and the quiet time. Often we would close the time with a meditation. And I found that to be very helpful because I was going through some pretty challenging transitions in that time. And it helped to move around a little bit and allow that to loosen up. Oftentimes, when I have that intention to not just hold on to something and control it, but to trust that I'm being held, I'm loved, I'm embodying love, I can open up with this and take a breath, and I'm still breathing and I'm breathing in again. So I didn't die. So somehow things are okay. And if I take that sense of movement like you're describing, and I sit my butt at the piano and put my hands on the keys, a lot of times that's when the most transparent, expressive songs come forth. It's all a part of the process. A lot of it did start with physical movement and being willing to feel in my body, feel what my body is feeling.
To being an artist.
We can be an artist with our words. We can be an artist with our gardening, with how we landscape our house. There's so many ways to be expressive. I love that you have modeled that for me from a young age all the way into now you're 95.
Yes, I guess that for our children, that kind of behavior was tolerated and valued. Some children grow up in homes where those kinds of tendencies are not valued.
I taught piano lessons for 40 something years. And I remember one time teaching a girl, she was probably maybe 7th grade, very affluent family. And in the piano lesson, she stiffened up and she teared up. She was just trying really hard not to cry because she wasn't playing her piece as well as she thought she should. And of course, I'm like, if you haven't practiced, that's okay. We'll just have a coached practice session. It's fine because they have enough pressure to play music perfectly. I'm just glad that they're putting their fingers on the piano keys. I hope whoever is hearing our conversation is assured and encouraged that it's not that we have to produce great art or great music or great whatever we want to make. It's allowing that whole process to happen, which you described as it doesn't start when we get the paintbrush into the ink. It starts way before then, doesn't it? Maybe it starts at the bar stool at the table.
Rolling in the sand or feeling connection to something.
Yeah. Oh, I love that you just mentioned that because it feels good to get my hands in the earth and observing the art and the expression in nature, seeing what you described in the tree branches as I'm picking apples. Once we awaken our awareness, boy, everything is expressing art to us, isn't it?
It's a big part of our human nature, isn't it? It's awareness on a different level. Instead of purposeful, I have to do this and this. Look at the water run by in the river.
Yeah. In speaking about awareness, a lot of your creations have come forth from your faith, your spiritual faith. Have you
believing in things that aren't just mundane, everyday, taken for granted?
Yeah.
I mean, the spirit is among us. We need to live like that.
when our creation is offered in awareness of the source of creation, then everything takes on a totally different feeling, doesn't it? I've witnessed that over the decades with you. Not just when you're creating a painting or a sculpture, but when you're fishing, or when you're walking, the way that you move. This must be going back 40 something years, a neighbor's party of some sort. You took me with you as a good auntie, bringing her niece along to the neighbor's party. We were welcomed and went into the living room, and there were already some women sitting in the living room. And I watched you approach one of the women that you didn't know, and she was sitting in the chair. You connected with her, and then your whole body did a welcoming gesture. You bent over and brought yourself more to her level, and you took her hand and held her hand, and you just looked at her. It's like you beheld her face, and you said, "I'm so happy to meet you." You introduced yourself. At that time of my life, the thought that I could ever be like that in a group of people, me, the introvert, just was not even in the realm of possibility. But I witnessed you welcoming that person as the person that you are with your whole body. And it was just one of those freeze frame moments for me.
Well,
That
great.
now I can do that.
Has brought out a lot of great things from you.
I love your joyful attitude of giving. It comes forth in your painting, in your creation, and in just your life. You see a way to spark some joy in somebody, and it's just the simplest thing. I've witnessed firsthand how busy you were when I was growing up, raising 7 children. You were working on the side all the time. You were cooking and taking care of children and managing the household. And if you weren't on the scene, you were probably in your studio creating something. So I knew you were very busy. Our families used to go camping in the summer. Mel and my dad and Uncle Dan, they were all teachers. So the summers were free, and we would often get all the cousins together and go camping somewhere. And when I was about 10 years old, we met at the grandparents' place in Oregon, and you had made me just a simple shirt, this sleeveless purple shirt. And it was great. But I'm like, how did she ever have time to make me a shirt? I was so blown away. You had sewn a shirt for me. It was made from scraps. I still love purple. You just like, here, I made this for you.
The book
Yeah.
I'm reading has a wonderful phrase, rest in love. I mean, I can lie back and I'm rest in love. Rest in love.
Yes. As a being who is now 95, obviously your energy level, etc., is not what it was 50 years ago. And yet there is this timeless, changeless spark that you are still embodying, that I am appreciating, and so glad that you are willing to have this Zoom conversation together.
Exactly. I didn't know what would come out of my mouth.
Me either. I never do. So I find you at 95, still able to demonstrate the essence of expression through your chosen forms of painting and sculpting and the components of that. And you're resting in love.
Yeah.
Yeah. So as you're resting in love, are there any words that come to mind and how you might even describe that indescribable state?
I guess don't worry about it. If it's a mistake, it's probably good.
I'll take it. Resting in love. More and more as I age, I come to the realization that the most real things are not what we see in the physical realm or experience in the physical realm. They are the invisible, the energies that manifested in the Sumi painting. What was that jumped off the page and then on the page as that particular angle or dynamic? There's a energetic reality. And as you're resting in love, my impression is that you're just beaming. You have had many years of experience and rejoicings, and you get to savor that now. And for anyone who is approaching elderhood, do you have any advice, ideas, encouragements?
Something Ben says all the time, don't worry about it. Well, I have to have something to worry about. I should rest in love.
Resting in love. Yeah, sometimes I'll wake up in the wee hours, and that's what feels best for me, is just resting in love, not apart. from anyone or anything. I'm just resting in all that is, and that it's okay. That's
Yeah.
right.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's a good summary of this exchange. This has been fun. Thank you for asking.
Oh, you too. It's been delightful. You are delightful. And I'm so glad that you continue to join us for Tai Chi each week.
I keep saying, when is this going to be over? When I can have dinner?
Yeah, and what's for dinner tonight? Right. Well, thank you, Bernice. Thank you for joining this evergreen conversation with Bernice Strawn as we explored the timeless wisdom of resting in love as a philosophy for art and life. I hope you feel the profound connection between our everyday experiences, our creative process, and our artistic expression. It's such good medicine, isn't it? You're invited to savor more of Bernice and Mel Strawn's art and other resources and information at songrise.live. That's SONGRISE.LIVE. A complimentary e-guide is waiting for you there as well. I'm Colleen Akiko, host of the We Be the Change podcast and blog, wishing you a life beautifully woven with creativity, grace, and joy.
Being present to the realities that are around you and seeing them. Suddenly you see things in a whole new way. The spirit is among us. We need to live like that.